Hello everyone, I'm glad you're back to watch video 4 on our performance task. I'm going to share my screen with you, but in the meantime, go ahead and pause so you can get all your materials. Remember, you need your performance task packet when we were working on, right? This one. And so far, we've done part 1 of the performance task, which was our question number 1, question number 2, and question number 3. We took care of that. Your assignment was to write a short paragraph to answer question number 3. I'm going to share my paragraph that I created to answer this question. So hopefully you got a chance to do yours, and we'll get started with that. So I'll share that with you. And we will also today start our performance task, which is our final assignment, which is to start getting a draft ready so we can write our essay for our last assignment, okay? So I'll walk you through it. Go ahead and press pause, grab your materials that you need, open up your notebook to where we left off yesterday, and let me share my video, or my screen, sorry. So give me a second. It's just that I have so many windows open. So this is part 1, what we were left off yesterday. This is where we left off. So part 1, continuation. Yesterday we finished part 2 together. We wrote this paragraph together, and your assignment was to answer number 3 with giving 2 reasons from source 1 and 1 reason from source 2, explaining why being an astronaut is hard work. So this is a paragraph I wrote out, and I wish you could share yours with me. If you can, that would be great. If you can take a picture of it with your parents' phone and just send a text picture of your paragraph to one of your teachers, that would be great. If you were able to get onto your Google Docs and type up this paragraph, that's even better. You can share it with us through Google Docs, just like we've done in class. So let me read it to you so you see where I included my, my 2 reasons and then 1 more reason for source 2. So here we go. Being an astronaut is difficult. Astronauts experience many things that a person with a normal job may never experience. The article titled, "What is an Astronaut?" discusses the many things an astronaut needs to know before they can go up into space. It mentions how they need to study the medical field to learn basic first aid. This helps them keep safe on their mission. Source 1 also explains how they train for hundreds of hours learning about space, studying the stars and Earth. Another source that has important information about astronauts is Life in Space. This source focuses on the type of changes the body of an astronaut goes through while in space. For instance, the blood flow in the body changes, causing the astronauts to experience a number of things physically. They get puffy face, a large neck, and a condition called bird legs. Astronauts endure many things while up in space. These and many other reasons are why being an astronaut can be a difficult career, but also very rewarding. Okay, so that was my paragraph or my response to question number 3. And I'll show you, I highlighted, if you can see here the colors. This one here is 1 highlight and then 2 highlight. That pertains to give 2 reasons from source 1. So here is my first reason, or my first comment from there, and then my other comment from source 1, what is an astronaut? And then I highlighted in another color here in like a light pink. This is my reason. It says here 1 from source 2. So here is my 1 from source 2, which is Life in Space. So you clearly see that I have a beginning to my paragraph, I also have the information that they're asking me to include, which is the 2 reasons, and then one more reason from the both articles. And then I have a closing sentence. Remember, it's important to always have a closing sentence. So I wrote, astronauts endure many things while up in space. These and many other reasons are why being an astronaut can be a difficult career, but also very rewarding, right? So that is my response, guys. I hope you have a response, or you got a chance to do yours. If you didn't, go ahead and if you take the time to copy this one down, it'll help you with at least the wording that we used. It'll help you with your writing. So take the time to do that if you didn't get a chance to write your paragraph, okay? So with that said, we have to move on to our part 2 assignment. So in our part 2, if you turn your page, or if you turn to page 6, if you look at page 6 tells us, if you can bring it up there. Let me see if I can bring up the, there it is. So page 6 tells us about our part 2, right? Part 2, astronaut information performance task. So here it's telling you, this is your assignment, okay? Just for the sake of time, I don't want to make your video super long, so this is what we have to do. It says your teacher is creating a bulletin board to display in the school library to show what your class has learned about different types of jobs. You decided to write an informational article on astronauts. So this is your job. You decided, you're going to pretend this is you. You decided to write an informational article on astronauts. Your article will be read by other students. Again, this is just pretend, right? So this is just your assignment, telling you that you need to write an informational article about astronauts, right? We have 2 articles. We need to use those 2 articles to put our essay or our informational article together, making sure we paraphrase, making sure all the things that we practiced, right? When we were writing our first essay, make sure you're citing, make sure you're naming the source where you're getting this information, okay? So we are gonna be doing that. Using more than one source, which we already have 2, develop a main idea about being an astronaut. Choose the most important information from the source to support your main idea. Then write an information article that is several paragraphs long. Clearly organize your article and support your main idea with details from the source. Use your own words except when quoting directly from the source. Be sure to give the source a title or number when using details from the source, okay? We did this, remember, we were writing our informational essays. We practiced this before we had to leave school. So it's giving you a reminder here. Remember, a well-written information article has a clear main idea. So we have to write down our thesis, which would be like our thesis, right? What are you gonna talk about? What are you stating? And it's well organized, stays on the topic, has an introduction and a conclusion. So we have to make sure we have an introduction. Our first paragraph, remember, is our introduction. Our last paragraph is our conclusion. It uses transitions, so we have to use those transition words, for example, or for instance, lastly, all those words that we've been practicing. Uses details from the source to support your main idea, puts the information from the source in your own words, gives the title or number of the source, develops ideas clearly, uses clear language, and follows rules of writing. We need to make sure we're writing our spelling correctly, using proper punctuation and grammar usage. So all of that needs to we need to make sure that all of this, to give ourselves a 4, remember how we have a rubric? To give ourselves a 4 for being the best, we need to make sure that our essay has clearly all these reminders that they're reminding us here, okay? So I want you to get your notebook ready. Let me go back to my slides and I'm going to show you what I have here. I know normally we give you organizers. We did this with our last essay, but unfortunately we are unable to, give you those organizers now. So I'm asking you to set up your notebook like this, okay? I have my notebook. I set it up like this. Make sure you title it Informational Essay on Astronauts. Write down thesis, give yourself some space. You see, I skipped like four lines there. Then reasons, and number 1, give yourself like 2 lines space. Then number 2, give yourself some space, and then number 3. So that's what we're gonna write on today, or this is what we're gonna work on today. This is just a draft. That means it's just pretty much giving us an idea of how we're gonna put together our essay. And we did this with our essays, if I can remind you. You should know how to do this, right? This is just another assignment that we're doing together, and I'm gonna walk you through it. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. Don't worry, I'm gonna walk you through it. Since we read the article, we already did main idea to both articles. We have all the information up here. And also, if you need to use your notes, remember, we have your notes in your notebook, right? We have these, right? We created these notes. So you should have this in your notebooks to help you figure out and get ideas on how we're gonna write this essay together. So pause the video, get your notebook set up like this, and when you're ready, go ahead and press play again, okay? So if you're ready to go, I'm going to start off with our thesis. What are we going to talk about in this essay that we're going to write together? So I was thinking we have one essay that tells us all the information that astronauts need to do or study and learn in order to become astronauts, right? That's what is an astronaut. It gives us all that information. And then our second source, Life in Space, tells us about all the different things that their bodies go through, right? While they're up in space, they get a puffy face, a bigger neck. They have the bird leg condition because they're not using their legs. So we know all this already. So what I thought about as I was thinking of my thesis, I have these 2 sources I'm going to use. So I'm going to start off with, like, I want you to think right now and say, what is my statement? What am I going to say? Remember that our assignment is to write an essay about why it's difficult to be an astronaut, right? So I'm going to start off with that. Having that in mind and knowing the 2 sources that I have, I'm going to start off with stating, this would be my thesis. Just bear with me. Let me give myself some space here. Okay. So I'll start typing and you can start writing. Okay. So a career as an astronaut is hard work and requires many hours of learning and training. Isn't that true? I mean, that's what the article says, right? We already learned that. So we know that it requires a lot of learning and a lot of training. I'm also going to include on my thesis, or in my thesis, I'm also going to say, not to mention what an astronaut experiences physically while up in space. Do you think that's a good thesis? A career as an astronaut is hard work and requires many hours of learning and training, not to mention what an astronaut experiences physically while up in space, right? Because we know that source one talks about all the training that they need to do. And that's why I wrote my first sentence there. And then we know source two talks about all the changes that their body goes through. So I wrote, not to mention what an astronaut experiences physically while up in space, okay? So I'm getting my essay set up for all the information that I already know that is in those two articles, okay? So now for details, we're going to write our detail number 1 and detail number 2 and detail number 3. So knowing the information that we have, we can say that our first detail is going to be astronauts have to learn and study many traits. That means many different things, right? So I would write that as my first detail. So astronauts have to learn and study many traits. That means different jobs. They're not only learning about the Earth and space and the stars and the moon, they need to learn about many different things. Remember, source number 1 mentions that they need to know a little bit of medical background, right? In case they get injured, they need to learn how to fly a plane. They need to be pilots. They need to know how science changes up in space, how things grow up in space. So there's many things that they need to know before they go up there. It's not only one job, okay? So that would be my first one. Our second one can be, remember that at the bottom of our source number 1, it mentions that they need to learn how to work together, right? That is very important. If they don't know how to work together, do you think things are going to go well while they're up in space? Not likely, right? They're in a small space and they need to learn how to work together. So I think that is very important. We need to mention that. So they need to learn how to work together. Okay, so that's 1 second detail, one important fact there that we know. And our last one is going to be, I wrote down astronauts while in space can get sick and experience changes to their bodies, right? Because we have to talk about changes in their bodies because that comes in from source number 2. So let's write down as number 3, that would be our reason number 3, or detail number 3, astronauts while in space can get sick and experience changes to their bodies. Experience changes in their bodies. Oops. Experience changes in their body, okay? So those are 3 details that we're going to be talking about and we're going to be including in our informational essay. Because think about it, these are the 3 important things out of the whole entire 2 articles, right? The number 1 is that they need to learn a lot of things. They need to study for many hours. Number 2 is that they need to learn how to work together. And number 3, the next important thing is that astronauts know that their body goes through different changes while they're up in space. So we're set, guys. These are the things that we're going to include in our essay. So what I want you to do is for tomorrow, I'm going to show you as a reminder what we're going to do tomorrow. I'm not asking you to create it right now, but I just wanted to show you my next slide so that you know where we're going with this, okay? So as you remember from our first essay that we created or that we wrote before we left, this right here, this whole entire thing that we just wrote is paragraph number 1. That is your introduction. Remember that? You have to include your thesis in your introduction. You have to include your 3 details. And if you remember, at the end of your paragraph, you need to have a closing sentence, right? Something that puts it all together. So I'm going to show you my next slide so you can see and see what I have there, and just as a reminder of what we're going to be doing tomorrow. So I have my same notebook here to the left, but I did something to it. I added other things. So if you see here, remember I told you that this first section that we just wrote is paragraph number 1. If you look here to the left, it says paragraph 1, right? So that includes your thesis, your 3 reasons, right? And as a reminder, I have it up here. Paragraph number 1 includes, remember, we have to include a hook, right? We want to make it catchy so that the person that is reading your article or your essay is interested, right? They want to be interested in your essay. So how are you going to hook them? You need to have a good hook, okay? So we have to have a hook. We have to have our thesis, which we already have, and we have to have our 3 reasons, which we already have. We have to include our closing sentence, right? So for your assignment overnight, I want you to make sure that you come up with a hook, okay? How would you start your paragraph, your introduction? One of the ones we practiced for our essays, remember, you can start with onomatopoeia. You can start with a riddle, okay? Did you know, right? Or you can start with a catchy phrase. In my idea, for me, what I'm thinking right now, I'm gonna start off with like a catchy, I kind of have it in my head where I would start off with, if you love to float in the air, see the stars up close, and try different types of experiments, becoming an astronaut is a job for you, right? So that sounds catchy. That sounds something like, oh, wow, I want to read this, right? If you wanted to become an astronaut and you read that, wouldn't you want to read more? So I'm thinking of my hook is going to be probably that. So I wrote it down and I have it ready. A closing sentence, I don't have a closing sentence yet, but I'm going to be working on that. So your job for your assignment for homework is I want you to, you already have this. I want you to think of a hook. How are you going to start your paragraph? What are you going to write at the beginning? And then right after your hook, you're going to include your thesis, okay? And then you're going to include all of your details, and your job is to come up with a closing sentence, okay? How are you going to put it together? So up here, I'm going to space down. So your job here is to come up with your hook. What is your hook? What's that catchy phrase? And your closing sentence. How are you going to put it together, right? So your closing sentence, just like if you go back to my paragraph, right? Look at my closing sentence here. These and many other reasons are why being an astronaut can be difficult. It can be a difficult career, but also very rewarding. That's my closing sentence to this paragraph. I want you to come up with a closing sentence to this paragraph that we're going to create together, okay? So get ready for that. Go ahead and take, it shouldn't take you too long, no more than 20 minutes or so. So you can put this together, write out your paragraph, and I will see you tomorrow so we can put it together. And oh, one other thing I wanted to show you. These are transitional words. You can also pause it and you can use these, right? So you can, or jot them down in your notebook. For this reason, for instance, in fact, another key point, with this in mind, in addition, important to realize at the same time, furthermore, additionally, moreover, in order to, in other words, to point out, in conclusion, to summarize, quickly and immediately. So you have all these transitional words that you can use as you're writing your first paragraph. So go ahead, if you can, jot them down, or you can just pause the video as you're writing your introduction, your first paragraph. Pause your video so you have these words in front of you and you can use them as you're creating your first paragraph, okay? Thank you guys. I hope this was very helpful, and I know we're going to do a great job putting this together. So let's get it started, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay? Have a good night.